their places. And I call the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Australian pensioners, be warned. Mr Abbott and the Liberal government are after your part pension and decreasing your pension. 9 times in the last election campaign. Not once, not twice, but 9 times in the last election campaign. Mr Abbott said, in his pursuit of the votes of Australians, he said there will be no cuts, no changes to pensions. He made that perfectly clear. No cuts, no changes to pensions. Mr Abbott looked the pensioners of Australia in the face, and he lied to them. He said that he will not change pensions, and he absolutely has. And the trickiness of the Prime Minister knows no depths. What he says to rationalise getting out of his broken promise is that the changes to pensions will occur on the 1st of January 2017. And in only logic, which this government can be famous for, they say that a lie legislated now is not a lie if the pensioners start losing on the 1st of January 2017. Australians know when they've been misled. The government is failing the present and future retirees of Australia. And I can say, without any fear of contradiction, that Labor will vote against Tony Abbott's new round of cuts to the pension. We will vote against these cuts because 330,000 low and modest income pensioner households will lose out. 90,000 people will be thrown off the pensions entirely. And what these legislative bullies on the other side say to justify it is they say, sure, we are flogging 330,000 people, but we are going to make a modest increase to some. So what he effectively is daring Labor to do is he takes people on modest incomes hostage and he says we won't increase their pension at all unless Labor agrees to support his electoral dishonesty and his broken promises. Well, we won't do that. And then what we hear is what this government is now world famous for. When you disagree with this government, or this government wants to justify breaking its promise, it starts attacking you. And we heard this fellow, the Prime Minister, get up in question time and he says, oh, we don't want millionaires to be getting the pension. He knows as well as I do. He knows as well as I do. And every one of those people sitting opposite should know if they do know. It wouldn't surprise me if some don't know, but we all know not to believe Tony Abbott at least. What he is saying is he's looking at someone's asset base. But what he doesn't look at is the income stream from that asset base. And what he's doing is he's saying, look at someone's asset base, and then he denigrates. What he's done today, in that shameless bullying style of this government, is he said that 330,000 people deserve to be taken off the part or full pension, deserve to have their money lost because they're millionaires. That is what he has said. He said they're all millionaires. The implication is, somehow, that they're all millionaires. I'll tell you who these people are that they're taking the money off. Let me go through the actual case studies. Fact will always trump the propaganda opposite. A single pensioner who owns her own home. A single pensioner who owns her own home and is earning less than $25,000 from their interest and earnings on superannuation. These are not millionaires. These are not millionaires. They would lose $8,200 to $8,200. This woman will lose almost a quarter of her entire household income. Labor cannot vote for a measure when we understand the misery and the consequences of the measure. $25,000 in income, that's what they've got. They lose $8,200. No wonder the government members look surprised. They don't know what they're doing. And if they do know what they're doing, that's even worse. Let me give another real-world cameo, not one of Tony's millionaires who he's so quick to denigrate. This is 330,000 pensioners, a couple who own their own home. Together, they draw down $45,000 together on their superannuation. They've worked hard to build that. They will lose their entire part pension of $11,400 per year. What they're going to do, this government, is take $1 in every 5. These are the real-world examples, but I've got more. It was Graham Ratcliffe who helped who gave us the details for a question. He says this: Surely you must agree there is something wrong with the system. When a couple with $400,000 in assets invested an average of 3% per annum, plus almost the full-age pension, will have an income of $43,766. But a couple with up to $800,000 in assets invested at the same 3%, plus a very small pension, will only have an income of $24,566. Now, it might be that each can live on a certain amount of money, but why is it that under this government they've created a binary situation? If you believe these fiscal bandits opposite, these pensioner, the enemy of the pensioner, what they say is there's only two types of Australian. There's people who have very little money who get the age pension, and people who have a bit more money and have a modest income stream and get the pension. That's all that, in the Prime Minister's sort of false binary he loves to create of the goodies and baddies, there's the really poor and then there's the modestly poor. But what he doesn't talk about is another group of Australians, Tony's multi-millionaires. On superannuation, they can, and I listened to this Assistant Treasurer use a cameo and distort and just lie about what I said, but that is what it is. We have little expectation of this person. But what we are proposing on superannuation is this. It's as straightforward as this. Listen carefully, Josh. Listen carefully, son. What we are proposing is that if you earn more than $75,000 a year, $75,000 a year, instead of getting a 45% tax concession, you only get a 30% tax concession. So what we are proposing is helping the budget bottom line over the next 10 years by $14 billion. We are proposing, and I'll give you another cameo in terms of who gets affected. There are 475 Australians with superannuation balances in excess of $10 million. That is a lot of money. $10 million is a lot of money. Courtesy of this government, if they wanted to have a 5% return on their, which is an average return on a super fund, they get $500,000 tax-free. But some of these other people, they want to take off the part pension and push them under or near $20,000 in total income per year. This is a government who says there's only two sets of people, really poor pensioners and modestly poor pensioners. And the government is inviting Australia and this parliament to choose between the two of them. We reject this false choice. Instead, what we say is to the 700,000 people who are planning retirement in the next few years, people at work and between the age of 50 and 65, there'll be 700,000 retirees, potential retirees, who stand to lose the pension altogether. So when this government casually says that we'll have a war between the really poor pensioners and the modestly poor pensioners, what they're also doing is it's not just the 330,000 victims they're proposing. This government is coming after the pensions of people who haven't yet retired. This is the consequence of the change. What we now have is we've got a generation of baby boomers who've been working hard, who are approaching retirement, doing the best they can to save superannuation, doing the best they can to try and prepare to have some asset in retirement. What this government's doing is it is going to slug in the next 10 years literally millions of Australians and affect their access to the pension. This government is vandalising the pension. The pension and the people who currently receive it are not on high annual incomes, they are not rich people and they deserve security in their old age. Yet the government will not go after the Costello-Howard loopholes where basically they said any amount of money in superannuation, the earnings in that can be tax-free, but they're going after pensioners on much more modest sets of incomes. A family, a person who has $500,000 are listed as their assets. Now, they put something aside for everyday emergencies. They have their car, they have their furniture. They might have $400,000 in term deposits. Sounds a lot to this mob opposite. Well, they know it isn't actually a lot. But when you look at the annual income they get, in the intersection with what they're doing in the pension changes, they are wreaking great havoc on hundreds of thousands of people who were told at the last election this wouldn't happen. And as much as the government members may bow their heads and find something terribly interesting in the latest government press release, the latest contribution from George Brandis to anything, whatever they're reading, I'd say this to you. We will fight for the pensioners. Last year, we stopped you with your pension cuts. Remember last year, for a year, this government bullied Labor. They harassed us. They said this government's not, the opposition's not telling the truth on pension index, but we won. We won. We stopped you cutting the pension, and we will fight you again. And we will warn every part pensioner in Australia you cannot trust the Liberal government with their retirement.